Wajdi ka khalsa, wajdi ki fateh, everyone. Thanks for having me. So, for those of you guys who haven't had the chance to meet me before, I grew up in Southern California, and then I enlisted in the military right after high school. I was stationed in Alaska for the most part, went to Iraq, went to Afghanistan. When I came back from Afghanistan, that's when I got married. After I got married, well, like in the process of getting married, I had to do marriage counseling. And that's because my wife is Christian. And so we had to do marriage counseling. And so during that process, they're asking us like, what's your stance on your different cultures? Because my wife is Punjabi. And they said, what's your stance on your different cultures? When you have kids, how are you going to raise your kids? Or like with what religion? And we had to sort that out pretty early on. So while we were figuring this out of we need to investigate more of our different cultures and our different, or like my wife was a Christian. She's very learned as a Christian. So we didn't really need to talk too much about that. But my wife didn't have she didn't have the strong role models or anything in her family or in her community that were teaching her about Sikhi. She didn't know much of anything about Sikhi as a young girl. And so, she ended up running away from that for many years. When we finally got together, we had to look at it together, and we grew into Sikhi at the same time. A lot of people have this assumption of like, I became a Sikh because my wife was a Sikh, and in order to marry her, I had to convert. And that's very far from the truth. I love Sikhi very, very much, very, very much. And like just what got me into Sikhi was just looking at so many things that happened in my life and a lot of the different spiritual teachings that I studied from different faiths. When I was growing up, I was raised as a Christian. I did not accept Christianity as a kid, right? It was just, there was a lot that I really didn't agree with and a lot that didn't make sense. I did not self-identify as a Christian. So like, as I kept growing up, like I studied Shaolin Kung Fu, which is a sect of Buddhism. I really love Buddhism. I studied a lot of different traditions around the world, and I sort of got to pick and choose the things that made the most sense to me. When I finally came into Sikhi, I saw everything was right there in one spot. And I was like, wow, I hit the jackpot. Like I won the lottery. Everything that I've been working towards in my life, it's right here. Right. And so I just fell in love with it right away. So as I was trying to come into Sikhi, I found that there's a lot of like anti-Black sentiment, just like in South Asian culture. I ran into this a little bit, like when I was in Iraq and when I was in Afghanistan, but I wasn't really having the kinds of conversations with people then that I do now with people, because then it was very different. I'm in a combat zone. I'm a soldier. I'm there for a very particular reason. Like I'm not there to get people to know me personally, but now I am, right? And so coming into the Gurdwara, like imagine this, it's 2010 is when I got married, start learning about Sikhi, start going to the Gurdwara. Mostly I'm studying on my own. When we go to the Gurdwara, it's a very mixed response, but for the most part, it's very negative, especially like for the first 3 years or so, it's a very negative response. A lot of people looking at me like I don't belong there. I was like embarrassed. Like I felt embarrassed to kind of wear my krada at the Gurdwara, because like I felt like if I'm not accepted by the community, then can I really call myself a Sikh? And that really, it messed me up. It took me a long time to get over that. A lot of people are saying like, would come at me with this approach of like, you're not a good enough Sikh because you don't keep your case, you don't tie the star, you're not speaking Punjabi. And so like I got a lot of criticism for that as well. And like the other one of the big things too is a lot of people really tried to push my wife and I out of the community as much as they could. Like I try to find out about classes in Punjabi school or events that are going on at the Gurdwara, and it's it was not being given that information, or people not really wanting to associate with us publicly, and like ignoring us in public. Sometimes I go to the Gurdwara, I'd ask a question of like, what time is such and such program? Someone would look me in the eyes and then just turn and walk away, right? And just wouldn't engage me at all. I go to the Gurdwara, I'm getting laughed at. My wife has been yelled at in the Gurdwara for marrying me, and like, what's wrong with Punjabi boys, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's like the the it's this been since 2010, and I'm seeing that wherever I go, because of like the work that I do of talking with people and speaking at Gurdwara, and getting to know the youth and doing prachar at Gurdwara, and just like on the side and just talking to people, I find that I'm starting to break down barriers wherever I go. But largely, there's a huge theme within the community that I'm constantly trying to address. And I have to acknowledge that a lot of our attitudes and ideas towards people of different races really comes from a lack of exposure to people who are in those groups. And so by default, you're just going to believe whatever you're programmed to believe. Like if at home, your parents have nothing good to say about people who are Black, or don't trust them, they're dangerous, they're uneducated, they're lazy, whatever it is, you won't know any better until you actually get out there and you start meeting Black people who work really hard and do a lot of seva, and have good grades in school and stuff like that. So if you don't have people around you that really embody the opposite of that thing that you've been taught was true, then how can you be expected to learn much different? So it starts young, right? And it starts at home. Now, I'm like a big proponent of giving people like the opportunity to talk. Like with my wife's family, it was like, it's been a very long and difficult journey, and we're kind of at a crossroad now where it's like we just sort of agree to disagree. We still don't have a good relationship with my wife's family. In the beginning, it was, don't let him in my house. Then it was, don't tell the grandparents. Then it was, don't be seen with me in public, this kind of thing. So it was like, it was really difficult when we try to figure out what's going on. Where does this come from? Just talking to people, we come to find out that a very long time ago, someone in their family had a really negative experience with someone who was Black. And then so they just painted the whole Black community as being exactly the same. Right. And so it's like now we have something that we can work with. Right. And if you just ask people, like, where did you learn that? Like whatever it is, whatever assumption that they have, where do you learn that? Just give them that chance to talk, because chances are they just haven't had that time to grieve about it yet. I'm really big on like saying like racism is an action. Racism is not like, people are not racist, right? I don't ever call anybody racist, and I don't want you guys to call anyone racist either. The first reason is that we need to give people the opportunity to change, right? And if you're constantly beating it into them that they're racist, eventually they're going to start leaning into it. They're going to feel like it's inescapable. We have to show them that there's a better way. So if you just say, hey, that comment that you made is racist, then they can say, okay, well, maybe I need to get away from this comment, right? But how can you run away from your own self-identity if some people's constantly telling you this is what you are? So like I say, instead of like calling people out, I say call people in. You say this action is racist, or that behavior is racist, or it's not fair, and this is the action that we need to change. But people are not racist. And then the other thing is, it might be really hard to have that conversation, especially with people in your family or your friends at school, and they're making jokes about people of a different background, or they treat them unfairly. It's my wife growing up, she was not allowed to have Black friends. Like she heard all the criticisms, about people from different communities growing up. When she got away from that environment, she saw things very differently, and she was able to realize, oh, wow, this is not at all the case of what I was taught. So I think that being a good neighbor is also a really important step, and that's not hard to do. When I was coming into Sikhi, if there was ever one person or two or three people in a group who were saying something bad about me, there was always like 20, 30 people who were standing around watching, not saying anything. They didn't say anything to the person who was laughing at me or making fun of me. And they didn't say anything to me to say, hey, that's not right. Sikhi teaches equality, right? We're all come from the one, and we shouldn't be discriminating. Rath Maryada says we shouldn't discriminate. Hukams of Guru Gobind Singh Ji say you should never slander or gossip or backbite, right? Like they're not saying like this is not Sikhi, right? We're all the same. No one ever had the conversation with me. So now I'm going around for a long time just totally discouraged, feeling like I really probably don't belong here. What am I doing? Not really realizing that if somebody had come to me early on and was just like, "Hey, they're not all like that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that was your experience," then that would have really encouraged me quite a lot, in the beginning. And it took me a long time to get over that. Um, so I gave you guys a link to like answer a bunch of ask a question, whatever questions you guys had, and I want to take a few minutes to address those. Um, I kind of skipped the section of my talk on like what is BLM and racial inequality because I figure like you guys are a little bit older, you guys have that experience and stuff. You should know what it is, and I want to spend more time focusing on the questions that you guys asked. But to get into some of those, a lot of people were asking me, um, like, what are some of the challenges that I face? I hope I address some of those in the talk today. Some of you guys want to know what's like the biggest obstacle that I had to conquer. So the biggest obstacle for me is this feeling of aloneness, right? And this is for me being Black and a Sikh, feeling alone. Like no one gets it. There's no one else in the community around me that I can really talk to. I do know a few other Black Sikhs. Um, like all but one of them is in the US and in the UK, right? So like there's nobody here in Canada that I can really talk to or see on a regular basis. Me feeling alone comes as also of like, why am I being attacked and singled out? And no one has ever stood up for me. It took me a long time to be able to stand up for myself and to learn a great deal about Sikhi so that I could actually stand and have that conversation with somebody about this is not the Guruji's message at all. That took a very long time, but no one ever stood up for me. And so like that made me feel pretty alone, like within the month of like nobody cares. Feeling alone because I don't have a relationship with my wife's family or with my own family. Part of that is because of distance, and part of that is because of other tensions, like with like racism and some other things. And then like another thing is like try to feel alone and like trying to like find a lot of genuine friendships or genuine connections with people, and just um, really like battling this weird, really weird space of on one hand I'm a novelty, and on the other hand like I'm like this total outlier. And so like as much as people look at me if like wow you don't belong here, there's a lot of people who look at me like oh I'm the pride of the month, right? If like this guy's so amazing, he came from outside the community, he sees what's so amazing about Saki, we should get him to pump up our kids and give them a lot of that pride that he has. And like that puts me in a really weird position. Like I don't have any anonymity anymore. Like you can Google me, and there used to be a bunch more videos, that were out online. Had a bunch of them taken down, and it's like all of my stuff is public. I used to work at an airport, and almost every week someone come up to me like, "Hey, you're Tegh Singh, right?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's right." And like it's awkward, right? But it's a weird feeling. So like I think that feeling of aloneness is not unique to me at all, right? I think every single one of us feels that in some way. Whether you go someplace and you're the only person who's wearing a dastar, the only kid who's wearing a parka, or you're the only Punjabi kid, or whatever it is. I think we all have that. So it's not unique to me, but I think that for me, it's definitely a reminder that we need to support each other every place we go.
Thanks.
Some of you guys said,
Thanks. I'm gonna pipe in here. So I bet you
yeah.
none of our kids have ever felt alone at a gurdwara.
Yeah, yeah, probably not at the Gurdwara. Yeah,
That's a unique experience to just you. I mean, so
yeah, yeah,
just imagine, guys. I mean, gurdwara is the guru's. It's the place where you go for the guru's love, right? So open arms. So if you guys were ever in a position whereby which you see someone not being treated fairly, regardless of who they are and why that is the case, Tegh's, basically saying that he felt alone. Imagine put yourself in their position, how they might feel. And don't be a bystander, be an upstander, right? So say something, do something. A lot of our preconceptions come from our parents with the Punjabi, community, the culture that came along with the, Punjabi aspect. Remember, there is nothing specific to Sikhi that requires you to be Punjabi, right? Punjabi is simply where it started. So, but that doesn't mean that we have to make the Punjabi culture the Sikh culture, right? The Sikh culture is something separate, and that's Guru Gobind Singh Ji's culture, right? So just remember that if you're ever in a Gurdwara and you see someone being treated unfairly for whatever reason. So I just thought I'd say that because I don't think any of these kids have ever had that experience of going to Gurdwara and feeling, isolated or segregated.
Yeah. And like another thing is like don't limit it even to just people who are being treated unfairly either. Right. Like if you see it, absolutely go and support that person and be kind to them. But like when like I do a lot of work like with the homeless community here, and every single homeless person that I find, I'm like, do you know where the Gurdwara are? And I always give them very specific instruction. I make sure they know that you can go there and you can get food. And like whenever I go to the Gurdwara, if I see somebody sort of walking around, looking at the pictures, not really know what's going on, if I see somebody who, walks in and, they don't cover their head right away, they don't take off their shoes, they just kind of stand around trying to figure out, where they are. I always make a point to go up to those people and say, hey, if I'm in the Lunger Hall, hey, can I get you anything else? Like, what more do you want? Right. If I see those people walking around, it's like, hey, it doesn't look like you've been here before, but cover your head, take off your shoes. This is where you wash your hands. I invite a lot of people to the Gurdwara. I give them tours of the Gurdwara just on my own, right? I want people to come and be able to feel at home and feel like they're not alone whenever they go there. Um, I know for you guys, like I live independently. I drive to the Gurdwara. I sort of do my own thing. You guys probably not so much. When you guys go, it's probably with your family or whatever it is, or maybe just, I don't know, after school or something. But like the point is, whatever form it takes for you, be a good neighbor, right? Whatever form that takes. A lot of people wanted to know, like, how do I deal with staring? And so, yes, whenever I go to the Gurdwara, I get this fish tank syndrome, where it's everyone is turning to look at me when I'm in the Vaughn, when I'm in the Lunker, walking around the building. And so, like, I sometimes like I just kind of ignore it, like it's not happening. Other times, like I look at people and then I just say "fate" back, right? That's it. Um, so like people have different reasons for why they stare, but I find that just this is what I'm here for, is breaking down barriers as much as I can, right? I don't need to turn it into an awkward interaction. I just say "fate" and then I just keep going. And then a lot of people wanted to ask, how do I deal with a lot of these challenges? How do I handle negativity? So there's a couple things. For me personally, I treat criticism the same way that I treat any kind of praise that I get. I treat them both the same. And I don't get fixated on people who treat me nicely, and I don't get fixated on people who make fun of me or anything. Anyone has anything nice to say, it's just, okay, thank you. And then I just let it go as best I can. If I'm having a hard time letting something go, then I just take that time, and I have a couple people that I can talk to where I can get things off my chest and try to figure it out and see it from a different angle. Um, and and then again, I'm just trying to let it go as much as I can. I don't want to hold on to this stuff because like I got to a point early on, not really early on, but like eventually over time, I got to this point where I started to feel like all of the things that people were telling me were the absolute worst things about me were the things that gave me the most credibility and that empowered me the most. Right. So like it was bad being Black. It was bad being poor. It was bad growing up in the ghetto. It's bad being a Black Sikh. It's or like it's bad like going to war and coming back with PTSD. And then so now I'm just like, okay, I know, like I have all these things now where it's like I know what it's like to be different, to be pushed out. I'm going to help those people. I know what it's like to have nothing. I'm going to help those people. I know what it's like to be discriminated against. So I'm going to advocate for those people. And so it's like, it's whatever happens to me, I just take it as feedback and it is what it is. I'm not here to make everybody happy. I'm not here to be everybody's friend. I'm just here to be kind, do seva, try to be a better Sikh every day. Um, so what else? Does anybody, if you guys have any questions now, like while we're talking, you can jump in or put it in the chat and we can address it because we just have like 2-3 minutes left for the session today. Someone asked me, like, was it hard growing up as a Sikh? I came into Sikh in 2010. So it's been 10 years now. But in addressing that question, I did want to say, like, even though I don't know what it's like growing up as a Sikh, uh, I I will say that growing up being Black and facing a lot of discrimination and racism in my community was how I started life out, and that had a lot of challenges, right? When I came into Sikhi, I had some mixed reactions. Like when I first started wearing the star, really mixed reactions. I was volunteering with something that's like JRTC. I don't know if you guys have that at your schools, but I was volunteering at something, and I remember like the first day back after vacation, I was wearing the star, and someone that I was working with, he's like, he had no idea what Sikhs were. He had no idea. He looked at me. He says, "Are you a Muslim?" I said, "No, I'm not. Actually, I'm a Sikh." But he says, "Hey, I don't know what kind of ceremony or initiation you've been through while we were on break, but I just want to say I'm really proud of you." Right? Just seeing me in my Dastar. Other people in my life, like immediately people that I knew for a long time, or some people said, "Hey, you look like a terrorist," or, "You had the name Jesse before. Why don't you go by Jesse? Don't use the name Tegh," right? Or whatever it is. And like, so I got a mix of being discouraged and being encouraged by people. But I'm grateful for both, I will say. And what else? What other questions do you guys have? I'm looking at my list. I'm running out of things to talk about. What made you want to join the military? Yeah, I wanted to join the military because it's something that I just kind of always wanted to do. I had a couple family members that were in the military before. I spent some time with them, and turns out it was just right up my alley. It was perfect for me. I'm an artist. A lot of people, like towards the end of my high school career, were telling me, "Hey, you should go to fine arts school and you could be any number of things." I just did not have that kind of confidence in myself for getting higher education. And the military felt like a very safe thing to do. It was what I enjoy doing. Like I'm very active, physically active. I've been a lifelong martial artist. Using weapons and stuff was what I did all the time for fun. Plus, I could travel and things like that. But yeah, it was a good fit for me, and I'm really glad that I did. It was a trade off, some good, some bad, but I'm glad that I did it. Next question is, how have you overcome your challenges through discrimination as a Black person and as an African American Sikh? I don't really actually feel like I've overcome a lot of these challenges. I feel like I'm still working through them every day, and it's just kind of a part of my everyday life, right? I have a daughter now. She's 5 years old. She's part Black. She's part Punjabi. She gets comments, on like, "Are you Punjabi or not?" People notice her hair is a little bit different. They question that. I still have to go out every single day, and I have to talk to parents. I have to talk to teachers at school. I have to talk to people that I meet, just random people on the street of, yes, I'm Black. Yes, I'm a Sikh. It's a thing. Sikhi is for everybody. I'm constantly, every single day, fighting against discrimination and teaching people that there's a better way. We can all accept one another and celebrate each other's differences, and we should. But again, like it comes back to, and I want to wrap it up here, but it comes back to just being a good neighbor. And like I can't argue a racist idea out of somebody's head, right? If I'm going to change somebody's mind, it's going to be through kindness. It's going to be because I defy everything that they've been taught to believe about Black people being dangerous or being uneducated. Oh, my daughter wants to join me. Gonna say hi? She came in the morning. But yeah, it's like, so it's just defy those stereotypes, break it up for them, right? We're not all the bad things that people make us out to be. Why am I in your room?
You're so silly.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll leave it at that. We're at the top of the hour here. But thank you guys so much for having me.
Guys, do you guys have? And does anyone have any last minute questions for Tegh Singh? If you guys do, then unmute yourself and feel free to go ahead and throw it out there. If not, then I have a question that maybe we can put out there. So I'll give you guys an opportunity. If anyone has it, feel free to unmute so you guys get priority. Otherwise, I'll ask. So Tegh, was there, and there's been um, the military as it pertains to the Khalsa. I mean, if you look back at the foundation of the Khalsa and how it was, the premise that it was formed and manifested, was all about injustice. It was all about you know standing for those who couldn't stand for themselves. It was about going around and looking for, people say that, Guru Sahib gave us this distinct identity so that we could be like these bright lights within the community that people know to come to in the event that they need help, in the event that they need something. So, even now you hear about, women only getting into cabs in India who have, or that are driven by sardars because they feel comfortable knowing that they're going to do the right thing, that they're never going to violate them, that they're never going to do anything that's going to put them at risk. Knowing that about the Khalsa and the fact that this sense of doing the right thing and injustice, fighting against injustice, has always been the premise. Have you ever had any conflicts within your military service that perhaps went against that in terms of, you hear sometimes of the military, going into an area to control it or to secure a position or to go into a village and look for, people who might do them harm, etc. I mean, has there been anything that has gone against your grain as a Sikh in your military service in that regard?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Absolutely, there has been a lot of that, and that's a huge reason behind why I got out of the military. I saw so much of that overseas, especially. Um, a lot of the how do I explain this? When you go into the army, everyone comes from someplace different, and you accept that. You accept that everybody's different, and you spend so much time with each other, supporting each other, overcoming these huge obstacles together, and you watch each other grow. And through that bonding, you love people that serve with you in a way that you could never love anyone else, right? And so it's like you look past everybody's flaws and you just see them as a person first and foremost, and everything else is just extra. It'll come and go, right? But somehow that just didn't quite translate a lot of times for the people that we were supposed to be serving overseas in combat zones. And I was having a really hard time with that. In Sikhi, in Itihas, there's this ongoing thread of political suppression of Sikh ideas and of trying to get the Panth to stop growing, right? Political prisoners, the shaheeds, you name it. There's everything that all the worst possible things that can happen have happened. And like in that spirit of perseverance and pushing forward, like of trying to lift up the whole community and by extension, everyone around that community, like what I was seeing overseas was not something that's really new to us as Sikhs. But like I got to a point where I said, I don't think that it's the it's not morally defensible anymore to take part in a system that largely goes against what I believe, right? As um, Not necessarily as a Sikh, but I would say as somebody whose heart really aches for those who are downtrodden and people who need a lot more support. I began to question everything a lot more. I began to disagree wholeheartedly with a lot of the any kind of cultural jokes that were being made, or like painting an entire community just as being the enemy, et cetera, et cetera. I had a really hard time with that. The things that I really love about the military, though, is that esprit de corps of like the team spirit. Me, like as a like going into basic training, they kind of beat it out of you, this idea of being an individual, and everything is about the team. And so now I'm not in the military anymore, but still, like a part of like when Guru Gobind Singh Ji made the Khalsa, like the very first thing he did before there was any ret, before there was anything, it was the punch, right? It was the group first. And like we don't really give that, like we're in a very individualistic culture here in North America. And so like we don't really explore that idea of like the group identity and what that entails, right? There's a little bit about the Kakars, but and how that kind of ties together with a common heritage and a shared experience. But there's so much more to it. There's layers to that. And that's something that I really got to explore in the military. And so like giving back um, giving back to the community and trying to uplift everybody else and saying, hey, this life is, it's not all about me. It's not a single player game, right? And if you can be a team player and you can help other people out, everybody benefits, right? And like individually through whatever seva I'm able to do, I find that it's changed me quite a bit over the years, doing that seva and reaching out and just trying to be honest with who I am and what I want to accomplish in this life. You know, and the military helped me um, to an extreme degree in really getting to that place, right?
That's fantastic. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for those insights. So with that, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap up here. Thank you again, Tegh Singh, for taking time out and spending time with our kids, sharing your thoughts and your experiences. I think that was a really beneficial for them to hear, and I'm sure we'll have you back again. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
In particular, so. All right, so guys, if we can all, with a resounding fateh, and then we're going to move back to the main divan, leave the breakout room back to the main divan. Let's give Tegh Singh a resounding fateh if we could. Okay. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa.
Waheguru
Ji Ki Fateh.
Fateh. Thank you again.